Hey guys, welcome to another video for anatomy and physiology. I'm continuing the previous video where we talked about neuron transmission, where we're transmitting a signal from one end to the neuron to the other, and we called that an action potential. And remember that this signal is essentially made up of sodium ions and potassium ions being exchanged and move across a membrane. And that exchange causes a potential difference and a voltage difference. And that voltage difference propagates throughout the neuron. And so we finished the last video on this subject where the signal gets transmitted down the axon. And we're now continuing and finishing up what happens at the end of, at the postsynaptic, if you will, at the postsynaptic side of the neuron. Now, interestingly enough, the wording's going to change a bit because now we're looking specifically at what happens when one neuron communicates with another. Let's label what we have going on here first. So the first part here that you see, the first knob, that's called the presynaptic neuron, okay? And then we have a space in between called the synaptic cleft, and then we have a postsynaptic neuron, all right? So, and then also we have the synaptic vesicles. These are, these have themselves, they're surrounded by a membrane, a phospholipid bilayer membrane, and it's circular or spherical. And inside of these synaptic vesicles, we have what's called a neurotransmitter. And in this case, this is acetylcholine, okay? Neurotransmitters that have, or neurons that have the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, these are called cholinergic synapses, okay? And that's because they employ acetylcholine, okay? So, all right, so as we continue on, so on the postsynaptic neuron, we have what's called the gated channels, okay? And you remember those from the previous video. These gated channels, when activated, open up and allow sodium to go through. Now that we have all the players mentioned, let's talk about the actual process of transmitting the signal. So as the action potential gets transmitted down the axon and it arrives at the postsynaptic knob, okay, which we're going to now rename the presynaptic knob, right? So as it arrives at the postsynaptic knob, it causes a voltage difference. And then that voltage difference causes the voltage gates to open and allow calcium in. So if you remember before, the voltage gates allowed sodium and they exchanged sodium and potassium ions. Well, this particular gate allows calcium ions to come in. And so that voltage difference causes these gates to open, and then calcium ions flood the presynaptic knob. Okay, so calcium ions enter the cell, and then what that does is that triggers the synaptic vesicles to release acetylcholine. And the way that they do that by a process called exocytosis, where the vesicles will attach themselves to the membrane at the end of the neuron. So they bind to the membrane and they slowly open up, releasing the acetylcholine. So then the neurotransmitter diffuses through the synaptic cleft to that space. And as it diffuses, it will bind to the gated channels on the other side, on the postsynaptic knob neuron. And as it binds to these channels, the sodium ions, this will allow the sodium ions to initiate the neuron to fire on the postsynaptic knob. What that means when we say fire, so as the acetylcholine binds, then it allows sodium to go into the postsynaptic knob and it floods the inside of that membrane, and that flooding of the inside causes a voltage difference, and if it's enough, then it will propagate the signal down the rest of the neuron, okay? And that's essentially the process. that your neurons go through, and that process we call synaptic transmission, where we're transmitting a signal. There are different kinds of transmissions. We have excitatory and inhibitory. Okay, so excitatory means it gets excited and it passes down the signal, or inhibitory, where you're inhibiting the signal from going forward. In this case, we are propagating the signal and moving it forward, and this is excitatory. Okay, so that does it for synaptic transmissions. I hope this video helped and it complements the previous one to it, where we talked about action potentials and voltage gated channels. So I hope this video helped. Good luck in your studying and thanks for watching.